Welcome to Does It Matter by Brainy Ballers, where we dissect the game with cutting-edge analytics to give you the upper hand. We analyze everything from hand sizes to average depth of targets to uncover hidden trends that no one else sees. Say goodbye to guesswork and hello to data-driven domination. Because here at Brainy Ballers, we don't just watch the game, we understand it. So get ready, it's podcast time.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting into something pretty specific but really interesting for fantasy players. We're looking at college wide receiver contested catch rates. Do they actually, tell us anything about future NFL fantasy success? Our mission here is to dig into the sources and see if these stats can give you an edge.
Yeah, exactly. The core idea revolves around using PFF data that's pro football focused, their college numbers, specifically that contested catch rate metric. It's all about how often a receiver makes a catch when a defender is right there challenging them. Can this stat actually predict how well they'll do in the pros, fantasy-wise?
Okay, cool. So let's break down the methodology behind the study we looked at. They analyzed the top 50 fantasy football finishers each season going back to 2020 based on PPR scores, right? Points per reception. And this seems key. They looked at the entire college career rate, not just like one great year.
Right. That career perspective is important. And the top 50 choice, that was deliberate. It was sort of a happy medium, Get the elite guys, but also include players down in that WR4, WR5 range, the 41st to 50th spots. Avoid skewing things with just superstars or, conversely, guys barely seeing the field. Gives a better comparison.
Now, here's where it starts to get, pretty intriguing. The initial look suggested a kind of subtle pattern. It looked like higher college contested catch rates might correlate with better fantasy scores. They found that in 3 out of the 4 seasons they checked, the guys finishing in the top 10 for fantasy points, they often had higher college contested catch rates than the guys finishing, say, 31st to 50th.
And they used something called the differences chart, which first pointed towards maybe 40%.
But they refined that.
They did. And this initial trend was based on a very small sample size, just looking at those top and bottom groups. But it was enough to make them dig deeper. They tested ranges around that 40% mark.
Do you want to start dominating your drafts? At BrainyBallers.com, we've researched every metric under the sun for you to find which ones are best linked to fantasy points. You can access hundreds of metrics to sharpen your scouting abilities so you know which metrics matter and which are just noise. Stop guessing on which thresholds to look for within each metric. Big numbers can be misleading or irrelevant. Our Ultimate Athlete Blueprints reveal essential scouting metrics, their importance, and benchmarks within each metric that help predict a player's probability of being a success or bust. Elevate your scouting ability with Brainy Ballers Ultimate Athlete Blueprints today. Click the link in the description. Now back to the show.
And they found that actually 41% and above seemed to be the, let's call it, optimal range based on those trends.
41%. And what did that refinement show?
Well, focusing on that 41% or higher resulted in players having a 20.5% higher historical likelihood of showing up in that top 10 fantasy group compared to the bottom 10 group. So based purely on those trends, that 41% mark started to look like a decent indicator for finding, consistent athletes using this one metric.
Okay, so 41% showed a stronger trend. But trends aren't always, statistically solid ground. What happened when they ran the hard numbers, the actual correlation analysis? What did the Pearson value tell us?
Yes, the Pearson correlation coefficient. That came out at 0.088.
0.088. Okay, for listeners, what does that number actually mean? Is that good? Bad?
Well, it's very low. It indicates basically no strong linear correlation between a receiver's college contested catch rate and their future fantasy production. You're looking for values closer to 1 or -1 for a strong relationship. 0 means essentially no relationship. So 0.088 is, statistically speaking, very weak. They were hoping for at least, maybe a 0.1.
Wow. Okay. So not the strong link some might expect then.
Not statistically, no. Just for context, think about something like QB draft capital. Everyone agrees that's important. Well, in a similar analysis mentioned, draft capital had a Pearson value of -0.219, but clearly showing a much stronger relationship, even if it's negative in that case.
Right. So 0.088 is definitely on the weak side. So boiling it all down, what's the takeaway for you, the listener, when you're looking at these prospects?
Okay, so pulling everything together, that college contested catch percentage, it's probably best viewed as a, let's say, complementary metric. It's not a silver bullet. It's not something you should hang your hat on as a definitive predictor of success. But if you are going to use it, The trend analysis did suggest focusing on guys with that 41% above career rate might be slightly more fruitful. Think of it like another tool in the toolbox, maybe, but definitely not the main one.
Interesting. A complementary metric, not definitive. That really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? So here's a final thought for you. If a metric, like this one, shows some intriguing trends, like maybe those top guys do tend to have higher rates, but it lacks a strong statistical correlation overall, how should you actually weigh that in your own player analysis? Does calling it complementary mean it still offers some unique edge? Or is focusing on it maybe more of a distraction when you're really trying to find consistent performers? Something for you to mull over.